Hyan stood at the viewing window of the transport ship, watching the Galactic Council station grow larger against the stars. It looked like a massive ring of crystal and metal, spinning slowly in the darkness of space. Lights blinked across its surface like a city that never slept. Behind him, Hana was reviewing her translation files for the 100th time, her fingers moving quickly across her datapad. Kang sat in the corner, his arms crossed, watching everything with careful eyes. "We're making history," Hana said quietly. She looked up from her pad, her face showing excitement and fear at the same time. "First humans to ever meet the Galactic Council." Kang grunted. "Let's hope they're friendly." The scans show weapons on that station that could turn Earth into dust. Hyan turned away from the window. As Earth's ambassador, he had to stay calm even though his heart was racing. "They invited us. That means something. They could have destroyed our probe ships, but they sent a welcome message instead." The ship shook slightly as it connected to the station's docking port. A soft voice came through the speakers, speaking in a language that sounded like music and wind chimes mixed together. Hana's translator device beeped, and a flat voice said, "Welcome, delegates from Sol 3. Please proceed to Council Chamber 7. The airlock opened with a hiss. The air that came through smelled strange, like ozone and flowers. The three humans stepped into a corridor that seemed to be made of living light. The walls glowed softly, changing colors as they walked. Other beings moved through the corridor, and Hyan tried not to stare. He saw creatures that looked like walking plants, beings made of what seemed to be smoke, and things he couldn't even describe. A tall being with blue skin and 4 arms approached them. "I am Delegate Vex, Council Archivist. I will guide you through the registration process." The voice came from a device on Vex's chest, translating his words into English. They followed Vex through the station. The council chamber was enormous. 47 different species sat in curved rows, rising up like an ancient amphitheater. Some were huge, filling spaces as big as a small house. Others were tiny, sitting on platforms that floated in the air. All of them turned to look when the humans entered. Hyan felt very small. Earth had only reached the stars 20 years ago. These beings had been traveling space for thousands of years, maybe longer. Their technology made Earth's best ships look like toys. "Please state your world's designation and request." A voice boomed through the chamber. It came from a being that looked like it was made of crystal. Sitting at the highest point, Hyan stepped forward, his voice steady even though his hands wanted to shake. "I am Ambassador Hyan of Earth, also known as Sol 3, third planet of the Sol system, located in the Orion arm of the Milky Way galaxy. We come seeking knowledge and peaceful contact with the galactic community." Hana handed him a data chip. "These are our planet's coordinates, our history, and our formal application for observer status in the Council." Vex took the chip and inserted it into a device that looked like a floating sphere of water. Information began to appear in the air, holographic images showing Earth's location, its sun, the other planets in the system. The council members leaned forward, studying the data. Then something changed. Vex's body, which had been a calm blue color, suddenly flashed bright red. The crystalline being made a sound like breaking glass. The water sphere shattered, and drops floated in the air like frozen tears. "Impossible," Vex whispered. His translator made. The words sound like a scream and a prayer at the same time. The crystal being at the top of the chamber stood up. "Clear the chamber. Emergency session. Code black." Suddenly, alarms began to sound. Not loud, but deep. A sound that Hyan felt in his chest rather than heard with his ears. Council members began moving toward exits, but they weren't panicking. They moved with purpose, like soldiers who had trained for this moment. "Wait," Hyan called out. "What's wrong? What did we do?" Vex turned to look at them. His forearms were shaking. "You gave us your coordinates. Your real coordinates. Of course we did, Kang said, stepping forward. What else would we give you? You don't understand, Vex said. His voice was breaking up, the translator struggling. That location? Those coordinates. They match. They match the old records. The Forbidden Place. The world we were told to never approach. Hannah's face went pale. What are you talking about? But Vex was already moving away, following the other council members. Guards appeared, beings wearing armor that seemed to be made of solid light. One of them gestured toward the humans. Come with us. You will be taken to secure quarters. We demand an explanation, Hyan said, trying to sound like an ambassador instead of a scared man far from home. The guard's helmet was blank, showing no face. The council will decide what to tell you. Until then, you will wait. They were led through different corridors, deeper into the station. The lights here were dimmer, and they didn't see any other beings. Finally, they reached a suite of rooms. The door slid shut behind them, and they heard it lock. Kang immediately went to the door, examining it. Locked from the outside. We're prisoners. Hyan sank into a chair that adjusted itself to fit his body. His mind was racing. What did Vex mean? Forbidden Place? What's wrong with Earth location? Hana was already working on her datapad, trying to access the station's network. I don't know, but I'm going to find out. Something about our planet scared them. Really scared them. Outside their window, they could see ships leaving the station. Lots of ships. Families evacuating. Running away from Earth from them. And nobody would tell them why. 3 days passed in the locked suite. 3 days of silence from the council. 3 days of watching ships flee the station through their window. Hannah barely slept, working constantly on her datapad. Kang paced like a caged animal, counting the guards that passed by their door. Hyan tried to stay calm, but it was getting harder. On the 4th day, something changed. Hannah sat up suddenly from her workstation, her eyes wide. Someone's trying to contact us. Through an encrypted channel. A trap? Kang asked, moving to stand behind her. Maybe. But whoever it is, they're using old Earth encryption. Really old. Like ancient Sumerian old. Hannah's fingers flew across her pad. I'm opening the connection. A hologram appeared in the air above her pad. It showed a being that looked almost like a giant moth, with wings that shimmered with colors that Earth had no names for. Large compound eyes reflected the light. Please, don't be afraid, the being said. The translator made the voice sound young and nervous. My name is Thin. I'm a junior diplomat from the Irith species. I shouldn't be contacting you, but I had to. Hyan stepped closer to the hologram. Why? What's happening? Why are we locked up? Thin's wings fluttered with what might have been anxiety. Because the Council is terrified. When Archivist Vex checked your coordinates against the Universal Registry, he found a match in the Forbidden Archives. Archives that are 50,000 years old. 50,000 years? Hana repeated. But humans weren't even in space 50,000 years ago. We were barely using tools. That's what makes it worse, Din said. Your planet's coordinates match a place from the old legends. Every species in the Council has stories about it in their history. We call it different names, but the meaning is always the same. The Death World. The Crucible. The place where the endless war began. Kang's hand went to his side, where he would normally carry a weapon. What war? We don't know anything about any war. Thin's entire body seemed to droop. That's the most frightening part. You don't remember. The Council's xenologists say that can only mean one thing. Whatever happened to the species that lived on your world before? It was so terrible that your entire civilization collapsed. Fell back to the Stone Age. Started over from nothing. Hein felt cold despite the warm air in the room. You're saying there were humans before us? Advanced humans? And something destroyed them? Not just humans, Thin said. The old records are fragmentary, but they speak of a species from your world that spread across many galaxies. Not as conquerors, as defenders. They were fighting something. Something that the current council's ancestors were too weak to fight alone. Hana was typing frantically, recording everything. What were they fighting? The records call it the void corruption. An infection from somewhere else. Somewhere outside normal space. It would take over worlds, turn entire species into weapons for its spread. The beings from your world, from Death World Prime, they were the only ones who could resist it. Something about your planet made you immune to its control. What happened to them? Hyan asked. To these ancient humans? Thin's wings went still, a sign of deep sadness in Irith's body language. They won. At least, we think they won. The void corruption disappeared from known space about 50,000 years ago. But so did the defenders from your world. The last transmission from Death World Prime said their civilization was collapsing. Too many losses. Too much damage. The survivors were going home to rebuild. And they never came back, Kang said slowly. No. The species that had fought alongside them, that had been saved by them, they formed the Galactic Council. Made laws. The most important law was this. Never approach the coordinates of Deathworld Prime. Let them rest. Let them heal. They earned their peace. Hyan sat down heavily. His mind was trying to process what he was hearing. So when we showed up, gave you our coordinates. The council realized that you've done it again, Thin said. You survived. You evolved back to spacefaring capability. 50,000 years, and you're reaching the stars again. Some council members think it's a miracle. Others think it's a curse. Why a curse? Hana asked. Because of the prophecy. Thin looked around nervously, as if afraid of being heard. Every major species has some version of it in their founding myths. It says, when the children of Deathworld wake again, know that the long peace is ending. They do not rise without reason. The deep calls, and they answer. The room went quiet. Outside, another ship left the station, running away into the dark. They think the void corruption is coming back, Kang said. And they think we're the warning sign. Yes, Thin whispered. Humanity's return to space isn't random. Your species has done this before. Fallen and risen. The council scientists think it's in your genes, built into your very nature. You adapt, you survive, you return to the stars. But the timing, the cycle, it matches the predicted return of the corruption. Hyan stood up, walking to the window. He could see Earth in the distance, a small blue dot. And the council thinks we're connected to it somehow. Some do. Others think you're the solution, like your ancestors were. That's why they're debating. Half want to quarantine your entire system. The other half want to ask for your help. Against something that destroyed our entire civilization last time, Hana said bitterly. Your civilization that also saved the entire galaxy, Finn countered. Without the ancient humans, none of us would exist. The corruption would have consumed everything. Everything, at the end. Why are you telling us this? Kang asked suddenly. You said you're not supposed to be contacting us. Finn's wings spread wide. Because I'm Irith, and the Irith were the first species the ancient humans saved. It's in our oldest stories. We owe your people everything. If the council won't honor that debt, then I will. The hologram flickered. I have to go. They'll detect this communication soon. But I wanted you to know the truth. Whatever the council decides, know this. You're not aliens to us. You're the descendants of heroes. And some of us haven't forgotten. The hologram disappeared, The three humans stood in silence, trying to understand what their world had just become. Not a young planet reaching for the stars, but the home of an ancient species, waking from a long sleep. And outside, deep in space where no sensors could detect it yet, something stirred. Something that had been waiting for the signs. Waiting for the cycle to turn. Waiting for humanity to remember what they were made for. On the 7th day of their confinement, the door to their suite finally opened. But it wasn't guards who entered. It was a being who looked like flowing water held together by force fields. Accompanied by Archivist Vex, the water being's translator identified it as Council Head Orvax. "We apologize for the delay," Orvax said. The voice sounded tired. "The Council has been in continuous session since your arrival. The debate has been intense." Ion stood to face them. "We deserve answers. Real answers, not locked doors and silence." Orvax rippled, a gesture that might have been a nod. "You're right. And that's why I'm here. Vex will show you the restricted archives. All of them. You need to understand what you are, what you were." They followed Orvax and Vex deep into the station's core. The archive room was cold and dark, filled with data storage devices from 100 different civilizations. Vex activated a holographic display that filled the entire room with light and images. "This is the history we don't teach," Vex said. "The true history of the Galactic Council's founding." The hologram showed stars, galaxies, worlds full of life. Then it showed something else. A darkness that spread like oil across space, consuming everything it touched. Worlds went dark. Stars flickered and died. Entire civilizations vanished. "The void corruption," Orvax explained. "It appeared suddenly about 52,000 years ago. We still don't understand what it was or where it came from. It existed partly in our dimension and partly in something else. Somewhere deeper. It could take over biological beings, turn them into extensions of itself." The images showed horrors. Beings attacking their own families. Entire fleets turning on their home worlds. The corruption spread like a plague, jumping from system to system. "Nothing could stop it," Vex continued. "Energy weapons passed through it. Physical barriers meant nothing. It could move through solid matter. And anyone it touched became infected within hours. The galaxy was dying. Then they came," Orvax said. The hologram changed. It showed a world blue and green. Earth, but different. Cities covered entire continents. Massive structures orbited the planet. Ships that looked nothing like Earth's current vessels filled the space around it. "Your ancestors," Vex said quietly. "They called themselves by many names in many languages, but the translation we use is the Watchers. They've been observing the galaxy for thousands of years, but they rarely made contact. They preferred to study, to learn, to watch. Until the corruption came. The hologram showed human ships engaging the corruption. And something amazing happened. The darkness recoiled. It couldn't infect the humans. It couldn't take control of their minds. We still don't know why," Orvax admitted. "Something about your world, about the way humans evolved. Maybe the constant disasters on your planet, the ice ages, the volcanic eruptions, the asteroid impacts. Your species developed a resistance to outside control, a mental immunity. The corruption couldn't touch you." Hana was crying, watching the images of ancient humans fighting alongside aliens from 100 worlds. "They saved everyone. More than that," Vex said. "They taught us to fight back." Humans studied the corruption, found its weaknesses. They developed weapons, tactics, technologies. Then they shared everything freely with every species willing to fight. They created the first multi-species alliance in galactic history. The hologram showed battles. Humans and aliens fighting side by side. Slowly, system by system, they pushed the corruption back. The war lasted for 2,000 years. We won, Orvax said. The last corruption entity was destroyed 49,800 years ago. The galaxy was saved. But the cost? The images showed Earth again. The great cities were ruins. The orbital structures were falling. The planet looked wounded, dying. Your people had given everything, Vex said softly. Entire generations born and died in the war. Your resources were exhausted. Your population was a fraction of what it had been. The last transmission from Earth's leaders said they were going home. They needed to rebuild, to rest. They asked us to watch over the galaxy while they healed. And you agreed, Hyan said. Of course we agreed. Orvax rippled with emotion. We owed you everything. We formed the Galactic Council on principles that humans had taught us. Unity, cooperation, protection of all species. We made a sacred law. Leave Deathworld Prime alone. Let them recover in peace. The hologram showed the Council's founding. Representatives from 40 different species swearing an oath. And in the center of the ceremony was a human symbol. A simple circle with lines radiating outward. A sun. We've honored that oath for 50,000 years, Vex said. We've protected the Sol system from every threat, though you never knew it. We diverted asteroids that would have hit you. We prevented other species from discovering your location. We waited for you to heal, to rise again in your own time. Then we showed up and ruined everything, Kang said bitterly. No, Orvax said firmly. You showed up and terrified us. Because the ancient prophecies are coming true. The hologram changed one more time. It showed mathematical models, probability curves, predictive algorithms. Our best scientists have always known the corruption would return, Vex explained. These things don't truly die. They retreat, they wait, they rebuild. The models predicted it would return after approximately 50,000 years. And here we are. And here you are, Orvax added, looking at the three humans. Humanity returned to the stars after 50,000 years. Not a coincidence. Your species rises when it's needed. It's in your nature. Your genes remember what your minds forgot. Hannah wiped her eyes. You think we somehow knew? On a genetic level? We think Deathworld made you into the galaxy's immune system, Vex said. Your planet tried to kill you every few thousand years. Ice ages, volcanoes, floods, diseases. You evolved to survive anything, to adapt to any threat, to never give up. And somewhere deep in your DNA, you remember your purpose. Hyan looked at the hologram, at the images of his ancestors fighting and dying to save species they'd never met. What does the Council want from us? Orvax was quiet for a long moment. The Council is divided. Some want to quarantine your system, keep you away from galactic civilization until we're sure the corruption isn't coming. They're afraid you'll bring danger. And the others? Kang asked. The others want to ask for your help, Vex said. To teach us again, like your ancestors did. To prepare for what's coming. To stand with us. What do you want? Hyan asked, looking directly at Orvax. The Council head rippled. I want what the founding members of the Council wanted 50,000 years ago. I want humanity to take its rightful place among the stars. Not as rulers. Not as servants. But as what you've always been. Our teachers. Our shields. Our friends. Outside the archive room, alarms began to sound. Real alarms this time, loud and urgent. Vex's body flashed red. Incoming transmission from deep space monitoring stations. They've detected anomalies. Unknown energy signatures appearing at the galactic rim. Orvax went very still. Show me. The hologram changed to show deep space scans. And there, at the edge of known space, were dark spots. Expanding slowly. Growing. The void corruption had returned, and the galaxy's ancient guardians had woken up just in time. The council chamber was chaos. Representatives from 47 species shouted at each other in dozens of languages. The translator systems couldn't keep up, creating a wall of overlapping sounds. Some delegates were demanding military mobilization. Others wanted to flee to distant galaxies. A few were calling for Earth to be destroyed before it could bring more danger. Hannah and Kang sat in the gallery, watching their presence tear the galactic government apart. "This is bad," Kang muttered. Some of them looked ready to start shooting each other. A new figure entered the chamber. Mira, another human, but one they hadn't seen before. She wore a researcher's uniform and carried a large data case. Behind her walked Thin, the Iris diplomat who had first contacted them. "Who is that?" Hannah asked. "Myra," Thin said, approaching their seats. "She's a researcher from Earth. She was visiting the science station on Europa when all this started. I brought her here because she has something important." Myra sat down next to them, breathing hard. "I got here as fast as I could. Thin told me what's happening." She opened her data case. "I was studying anomalous structures on Earth, formations in the ocean trenches and under the Antarctic ice. We thought they were natural. We were wrong." She activated a holographic display. It showed massive structures buried deep in Earth's crust. They formed a pattern, a network spanning the entire planet. "What are we looking at?" Hyan asked. "Sentinel stations," Myra said. "They're artificial. Incredibly old. And according to my scans, they're still active." Hannah leaned forward. "Active? You mean they're working? After 50,000 years? Not just working, broadcasting." Myra pulled up more data. "They're sending a signal into deep space. A pulse that repeats every 37 hours. It's been pulsing for thousands of years, maybe longer." Kang studied the data. "What's the signal saying?" Myra's hand shook slightly as she worked her controls. "I finally managed to decode part of it this morning. The message is in what we now recognize as ancient proto-language. The words translate roughly to, 'We stand watch. We always return.' The deep calls, but we answer." The chamber suddenly went quiet. Council head Orvax had activated some kind of silence field. "Delegates, please. We must think clearly. Fighting among ourselves helps no one." A massive being that looked like living rock stood up. "Think clearly. Deathworld has returned to space precisely when the corruption reappears. This cannot be coincidence. They must have brought it with them somehow." "That makes no sense," another delegate countered. This one was from a species that looked like floating jellyfish. "The corruption appears at the galactic rim, millions of light years from the Sol system. How could they have brought it?" "Maybe it follows them," the rock being insisted. "Maybe wherever they go, it comes." Orvax rippled with frustration. "Enough speculation. We need facts." Vex stood up, his body shifting through colors. "I may have facts. Something I discovered in the deepest archives." He activated his own holographic display. "I found records of the final battle of the last war. The humans didn't just defeat the corruption. They studied it, mapped its life cycle, and they left predictions. The hologram showed complex mathematical formulas and star charts. According to human calculations from 50,000 years ago, the corruption operates on galactic timescales. It appears, it spreads, it's beaten back, and then it retreats to somewhere outside our dimension. There it rebuilds, recovers, and after approximately 50,000 years, it returns." "They knew it would come back," Hannah whispered. "Our ancestors knew. More than that," Vex continued. "They predicted when and where it would reappear. And look at this." He highlighted a section of the star chart. The location of the first corruption appearances in the current crisis matches their predictions almost exactly. But why? Asked the jellyfish delegate. Why would they predict this and then leave? Why not stay and prepare? Because they couldn't, Myra said, standing up. All eyes turned to her. I'm sorry. I'm not supposed to speak here, but I think I understand. Look at the Sentinel stations. They're not just broadcasting a message. They're monitoring the galaxy, watching for the corruption's return. She brought up new data. These stations have been recording deep space energy patterns for 50,000 years. The data is all there, stored in crystal matrices that don't degrade. When the corruption started to return, the stations detected it. And they did something. What did they do? Orvax asked. They activated humanity, Myra said. I know this sounds crazy, but the timing is too perfect. The last ice age ended 12,000 years ago. Suddenly, humans started developing advanced civilization incredibly fast. In galactic terms, we went from primitive to spacefaring in the blink of an eye. What if the stations triggered something in our genetics? Woke up dormant abilities that helped us advance faster. Kang stood up too. You're saying we're programmed? Like biological machines? I'm saying we're descendants of the most adaptable species in galactic history, Myra replied. And somewhere in our DNA is the memory of what we're meant to do. The stations didn't create us. They just reminded us. Thin's wings fluttered excitedly. The prophecy. They do not rise without reason. It was never a warning. It was a promise. Humans return to space when they're needed. The chamber erupted in discussion again. Some delegates looked relieved. Others still looked afraid. The rock being stood again. Even if this is true, what good does it do us? 3 humans and some ancient stations won't stop the corruption. Last time, there were billions of humans across hundreds of worlds. Now there's just Earth, and they don't even have the old technology. Hyan stood up. He didn't know if he was allowed to speak, but he did it anyway. You're right. We don't have the old technology. We don't remember how to fight this thing. But we can learn. Our ancestors left those stations. They must have left more. Knowledge, weapons, plans. Even if they did, another delegate said, it won't be enough. The corruption is already spreading. We've lost contact with 3 frontier worlds in the last hour. Then we need all eyes, Kang said, stepping forward. The old humans didn't fight alone. They built a coalition, taught other species to fight. We can do the same thing. But you don't know how to fight the corruption? The rock being protested. Not yet, Hana agreed. But we know how to learn, how to adapt. It's literally in our DNA. She looked around the chamber. Our ancestors saved you once. They taught you that no species can survive alone. They created this council on that principle. Now it's time to prove you learned the lesson. Orvax rippled, his form becoming more solid. What are you proposing? Hyan took a deep breath. This was the moment everything would be decided. Stop debating whether to quarantine us or beg us for help. Instead, let us work with you. Give us access to the old archives, to all the data about the corruption. Let our scientists work with yours. Our military with yours. We'll share everything we are and everything we learn. In exchange for what? Asked the jellyfish delegate. In exchange for the same thing our ancestors asked for, Hyan said. Alliance, partnership. Not us leading you, but all of us working together. Humanity doesn't want to rule the galaxy. We just want to protect it. Same as we did before. And when this is over? The rock being asked. Will you leave again? Kang smiled grimly. Our planet tried to kill us for 50,000 years, and we're still here. We don't run. We don't quit. If the galaxy needs guardians, then that's what we'll be. Not because we have to, because it's who we are. The chamber went silent. Delegates looked at each other, having silent conversations in languages the humans couldn't understand. Finally, Orvax spoke. The council will vote. The vote took 3 hours. 3 hours of debate, discussion, and ancient protocols being followed. Hyan, Hana, Kang, and Mira waited in the gallery, watching as each species cast their decision. The voting system was simple. A blue light meant yes. A red light meant no. A white light meant abstain. The first votes were mixed. Some species voted blue immediately. Others went red. Too many chose white, unwilling to commit. Then something happened. Thin stood up in the Irith delegation section. As a junior diplomat, he shouldn't have been allowed to speak during a vote. But he stood anyway. The Irith remember, he said, his translator carrying his voice through the chamber. We remember when the corruption came to our world. We remember being hours from extinction. We remember the human ships that appeared in our sky. They didn't ask for payment. They didn't demand surrender. They just fought. They saved us. Then they taught us to save ourselves. Thin's wings spread wide. The Irith vote yes. And we will stand with humanity again, as they once stood with us. The Irith light turned bright blue. A crystalline being from another species stood. The Vetra also remember. Humans gave us the shield technology that still protects our worlds today. They asked for nothing in return. We vote yes. Another blue light. More species began to stand. Each shared a story. Technology the ancient humans had shared. Tactics they had taught. Lives they had saved. The chamber filled with voices, all speaking of debts 50,000 years old. The rot being who had argued against humanity stood up. The Korth are warriors. We respect strength, but we also respect honor. The ancient humans could have conquered us. They were stronger, smarter, more advanced. But they chose to be our allies instead. They chose to teach rather than rule. The massive being bowed, a gesture of deep respect. The Korth vote yes, and we offer our fleets to this new alliance. One by one, the lights turned blue. Not all of them. Some species still voted no, too afraid of the coming danger. Others abstained, wanting to wait and see. But the majority voted yes. When the final tally appeared, Orvax announced the results. The motion passes. Humanity is granted full membership in the Galactic Council. Furthermore, the Council approves the formation of a united defense force, combining resources from all willing species. This force will be called the Renewal Pact. The chamber erupted in cheers from some species, silence from others. Hyan felt tears in his eyes. They had done it. Humanity was no longer alone in the universe, but there was no time to celebrate. Alarms sounded again. Vex's body flashed urgent red. Emergency transmission from the frontier. The corruption has taken 5 more worlds. It's spreading faster than predicted. Orvax turned to the humans. The vote was the easy part. Now we must act. What do you need? Kang stepped forward. Access to Earth Sentinel stations. If they've been monitoring the corruption for 50,000 years, they might have data we can use. Weaknesses, patterns. Granted, Orvax said immediately. Vex, assign a science team to work with the humans. We also need to understand the old weapons, Hana added. The technology ancient humans used. It must be in the archives somewhere. We'll give you full access, Vex confirmed. Everything we have from the old war. Mira raised her hand hesitantly. There's something else. When I was decoding the Sentinel station signals, I found references to other stations. Not on Earth, on Mars, Europa, even on some of Saturn's moons. If those stations are still active, They might contain more than just monitors. They might be armories. How soon can you check? Orvax asked. I can have teams there in 2 days, Myra said. Do it, Orvax ordered. Then he turned to address the entire chamber. All species who voted yes, prepare your military forces. Share your defense data with the Central Command. We fight together or we die alone. The chamber began to empty as delegates rushed to prepare their worlds. But one being approached the humans. It was the jellyfish delegate, floating closer with gentle pulsing movements. I am Elder Sue of the Luminari, she said. My species did not fight in the last war. We are scholars, not warriors. But we kept records. Detailed records of everything the ancient humans taught us. She held out a data crystal. This contains the complete archives of human military tactics, weapons designs, and strategic philosophies from the old war. We've kept it safe for 50,000 years. I believe it's time to return it to you. Hannah took the crystal with shaking hands. Thank you. No, Elder Sue said softly. Thank you. For coming back. For being what the galaxy needs you to be. Days turned into weeks. The station became a hub of frantic activity. Scientists from a dozen species worked with Myra to explore the Sentinel stations. Military commanders studied the old tactical data with Kang. Linguists and historians helped Hannah decode ancient human records. And Hyon coordinated it all, working with Orvax to build a new alliance. The news from the frontier got worse. The corruption was spreading, consuming worlds faster than anyone had predicted. But now, instead of scattered defense, the galaxy was coordinating. Species that had barely spoken to each other in centuries were sharing resources and strategies. On Earth, the news of first contact had spread quickly. The revelation that humanity had once saved the galaxy became the biggest story in human history. Volunteers flooded recruitment centers, wanting to join the fight. The Sentinel stations were excavated, revealing technology that Earth scientists could barely understand. But they were learning. 1 month after the vote, Hyan stood in the command center of the council station, watching tactical displays. Kang was there, along with military commanders from 15 different species. They were planning the first counteroffensive. The corruption is massing here, Kang said, pointing to a star system on the tactical map. If we can hit it before it establishes a foothold, we might be able to slow its spread. A Korth commander nodded. My fleet is ready. We have human tactical advisors on every ship. The Vetra shield generators are in position, another commander added. Based on old human designs, upgraded with modern technology. Hannah entered the command center, carrying a datapad. She looked exhausted but excited. I found something. In the old archives, there's a reference to a weapon. The ancient humans called it the lighthouse. It wasn't a bomb or a gun. It was a beacon that could disrupt the corruption's connection to its home dimension. Could we build it? Hyan asked. We don't have to, Hannah said. According to the records, there's one already built, hidden in the Sol system, on Titan. 3 weeks later, a combined fleet of human and alien ships gathered around Saturn's largest moon. Mira had found it, a massive structure buried deep under Titan's surface. The lighthouse, still functional after 50,000 years. When they activated it, the effect was immediate. Across the galaxy, corruption entities recoiled. The dark stains on the star maps began to shrink. It wasn't a cure, but it was working. Buying time. Giving the Alliance a chance. On Earth, in the city of Sol, a young woman named Yuna stood in the crowd watching the live broadcast from Titan. She was a military cadet, barely 19 years old. On the screen, she watched the combined fleet celebrate their first victory. Her instructor, a grizzled veteran named Day, stood beside her. That'll be you someday, he said. Leading ships. Working with aliens. protecting the galaxy. Una smiled. Sounds like a lot of pressure. It's what we were made for, they replied. Not by some ancient programming or genetic code, but by choice, by courage, by the decision to stand up when the galaxy needs guardians. On the screen, Ambassador Hyan was giving a speech to the Allied forces. 50,000 years ago, our ancestors fought for a galaxy they barely knew. They gave everything to save species they just met. Today, we honor their memory not by repeating their sacrifice, but by finishing their work. Not as rulers, not as conquerors, but as what we've always been. Friends, allies, guardians. The fleet began to move, heading toward the next battle. Humans and aliens working together, just as they had 50,000 years ago. The corruption was still out there, still dangerous. The war was far from over, but this time, humanity didn't fight alone. And the galaxy had finally remembered the most important lesson the ancient humans had taught them. Together, they were unstoppable. The lighthouse pulsed, sending its signal across the stars. And on every human ship, every sentinel station, the same message repeated. We stand watch. We always return. The deep calls, but we answer. And the galaxy answered back, and we stand with you,